In this three-part series, we're going to take a look at lighthouses, how they work, some of their history, and how a modern-day lighthouse works. There's going to be 3 videos in this series, and I suggest that you watch all 3 of them. It'll be worth it, I promise. Hi, my name is Spence, and I'm a modern-day lighthouse keeper. I put together this comprehensive guide of exactly how a lighthouse works, and it will take a really good look at exactly how a modern-day lighthouse works compared to how it used to work. This video series is set into 3 different segments. We'll take a look at first the math, then we'll take a look at the history, and then we'll take a look at exactly what a modern-day lighthouse is like and what automation means for a modern-day lighthouse keeper. Hey everyone, welcome to part 3 of how a lighthouse works. In this episode we're going to take a look at what it means to be a modern-day lighthouse keeper and what kind of duties and tasks we perform, and then we'll take a look at the lighthouse itself and how automation works in a modern-day lighthouse. So let's take a look and we'll get right to it. So lighthouses are definitely different from what they were 100 years ago, and there are a lot of things about the lighthouse itself that you got to ask yourself, well, what do you actually do? Because automation has become a very important part of lighthousing and lighthouse keeping, and as you know, most places in the world, automation has taken over light stations, and there's actually not that many keepers out there anymore. So as a lighthouse keeper, what do you actually do? And of course, automation is still a very big part of our world, and it just kind of changes how you look at the job and what your tasks are on the job. So here at Entrance, our lighthouse is actually automated. The power and everything comes from the sun, and we'll take a look at how it all works in a little bit, and then you can see how the actual automation of the tower itself works. But what else is there to do? Well, one of the biggest things to understand about being a lighthouse keeper is you're on the water, and the water traffic is not like land traffic. When you get in the car, it's not as important what the weather is like. I mean, you don't want to go out driving in a really crappy day, and driving in the rain is not very fun, or driving in the snow is not very fun. But the difference when out on the water, if you're in a small vessel and there are high winds, it's not just uncomfortable operating your vessel anymore. It now becomes dangerous. So knowing and understanding weather is a very important part of what we have to do. Lighthouse keepers used to always keep a record of what the weather was like, and it was all kept in a book, and that book is pretty much useless for up-to-date weather. It was good if you had to go back and look at what the weather was like on a particular day or something, but if you want to know what the weather is like right now, then a book at a light station that you can't access isn't very useful. So of course, with modern day technology and communication, we have a much better opportunity to communicate this weather on a regular basis. And as a lighthouse keeper, we have to report the weather every 3 hours, starting from 3:30 a.m. all the way up until 9:30 p.m., which means that there always has to be somebody monitoring what the weather is like, whether it's nice weather, whether it's bad weather, and then reporting that weather to head office. And then that head office takes that weather and puts it online and in a radio broadcast so that mariners can check the weather at any given time and keep themselves safe on the water. It's not just mariners who use this weather, it's also aviation. We have to do supplementary weather, which has to do with cloud cover and and how high and how scattered clouds are, which helps aviators know what the weather is like when they're going to a certain location. And we're not talking big like 747 airplanes and whatnot. We're talking like small float planes, single prop planes, Cessnas, small stuff that go to small remote airports and water landings, who rely very heavily on what the weather is like at any given moment. So what else do we have to do as a lighthouse keeper? Well, lighthouses are all designated as heritage sites through the Canadian government, and so the land and the station itself has to be kept up to date and in good standing on a regular basis. And that means the grass needs to be cut, the buildings need to be painted and in good shape, and everything needs to be kept up to date so that the lighthouse maintains its historic building status and maintains a uniform look throughout all the light stations in Canada. And so you'll recognize here on our station, you can see the very iconic white buildings, red roof, and the gray basement. And this structure color scheme is apparent on all light stations throughout BC, and not only throughout BC but throughout Canada. Having to maintain buildings and structures that are constantly pummeled by bad weather, by salt water, by the elements is actually a fairly large task, and it requires a lot of daily work that is needed from lighthouse keepers, who are required to be fairly handy. You definitely need to know how to use a hammer and nails, a saw. You need to be able to do housework, do building work, do yard work, and all sorts of other things along those lines. Security is always a thing when it comes to light stations as well, because a lot of lighthouses are in very, very remote areas, and every lighthouse has a helicopter pad with it, which Coast Guard and other rescue agencies can use in an emergency. And a lot of other stations carry actual aviation fuel on hand, so that a helicopter doesn't have to go all the way to an airport for refueling. They can actually stop at a station, refuel, and then go back to whatever the emergency happens to be at that instance. So a light station is always an emergency location where people can stop in need of help. And it's not just things like helicopters. All stations do have a helicopter pad, but many stations have a dock or have a way of landing, so that if you have to, you could go to the station and seek emergency aid, whether it's you need a band-aid for a cut, or if you have something a lot more serious. Light keepers on hand are required to have their first aid, and so that they are there to offer help if it's ever needed. There are plenty of other small tasks that need to be done regularly, whether it's like watering the garden, or making sure that you have water to drink, or refilling fuel tanks, or checking the equipment. A lot of light stations are not only used by weather, but also for monitoring wildlife, monitoring marine life and whatnot as well. So there's a lot of equipment on hand that needs to be checked regularly and ensured that it's all in working order. So daily in your rounds, as you go across your station, whether it's an island, whether it's on a peninsula or what have you, you're required to check these different systems and make sure everything is operating. Automation is a wonderful thing, but it's not foolproof. Things break down, computer equipment stops working. We're in elements that are very, very rough on electronic equipment. Salt water is not the friend of electronic equipment, and so a lot of times things get rusty or things wear out and need to be replaced quickly and efficiently, and it's up to us as station keepers or lighthouse keepers to ensure that these things get taken care of in a timely fashion so that there's not an interruption in service. So I think this is a really great opportunity to take a look at the actual lighthouse itself, which is what is always appealing to being a lighthouse keeper in the first place. Being able to work and operate a lighthouse it's more than just the light, but the light is what makes the job intoxicating. So we'll start right at the bottom and then we'll work our way up to the top. And you can see here behind me we have a small building, and on top of the building we have some solar panels. And this building here is what actually controls the entire lighthouse. This building is separate from the rest of the station. We have generators, and there are other very large solar panels and wind equipment and whatnot that have to do with the station and electronics and whatnot, but the tower itself is not connected to those systems to ensure that if there is ever a problem with any of the systems, it's not going to affect the actual tower itself. Let's take a look here. We can take a look inside. It's a small metal building, and inside is a fairly simple actual setup. So we have some extra solar panels in case something goes bad and we need to replace them. We have a large bank of batteries. So this bank of batteries gets charged by the solar panels on a regular basis. Whenever there's any kind of sun, it charges up these batteries, and all of these batteries here is what powers the light. So why don't we take a look at the actual tower itself. This small building is actually right next to the tower. We got the tower here. It goes all the way up. Inside, all the systems, because it is a limited system and you want to make sure that it doesn't run out of power ever, all the lights and stuff are actually on timers. So if you forget to turn off the light, it's not as big a deal as if you left on the light and then it, accidentally drained all your battery power. So this tower is not that tall. This is the tower itself is 14 meters tall. There's 37 steps that go all the way to the top, and then 8 stairs, like a ladder at the very end to get up into the bell. So let's go up the stairs. So in the tower is a hatch in the floor, and you use that hatch to pull yourself up into the actual bell of the tower itself. Oh, it's nice today. So this is the light itself, and you can see it's not an impressive 2-meter first order Fresnel lens, but it is set up with all these different lenses. There's 6, and they are still a Fresnel lens, but just more focused. And of course, they're now made of plastic instead of glass, making the manufacturer a lot more affordable, a lot cheaper, and very easy to replace. But the likelihood of replacing them is, well, there's really not a lot of need to. So the light itself is actually set up, it rotates all the time. There's no turning it on and off. It's always rotating, but it's not always on. And what it has is a light sensor, and when this is covered, the light will go on. And when it's uncovered, the light will go off. So you might be wondering about the actual light itself. Well, we have a bulb here. This is a replacement bulb. And so you can see, that's it. That's the bulb. That's what lights 15 miles using these lenses. That's it. So at this point, you may be saying to yourself, well, you know, at least being a lighthouse keeper and automation and everything, at least you get to change the bulb once in a while, right? Well, see, here's the thing. These bulbs are definitely long-lasting bulbs, and one bulb can last from 3 to 5 years. And 3 to 5 years is a long time for a single bulb, but inside this setup, there are 5 bulbs. And when one bulb goes out, then the apparatus knows that the bulb no longer works, and it will click to a new bulb. So if each bulb were to last, say, 5 years, at 5 bulbs, that's 25 years before you actually have to go inside the structure itself and change the bulb. So yeah, it's it's fairly easy to, there's not much that we have to do. When you wake up in the morning, you go outside, you look, and if the light's still on, then you're good. You come into the tower every once in a while, make sure that everything is clean, make sure the grounds are clean, the outside is all in decent shape. We do get a lot of birds and stuff around here, and sometimes they make a mess, but yeah, it's definitely not, we don't have to sit here and polish the lens and make sure all the windows are 100% fully clean. Everything the way that it works is very efficient and works quite well. So yeah. The outside of the tower is actually also covered in all kinds of different equipment and whatnot as well. So it's not just inside the tower, but outside the tower as well. You can see here that we have an actual camera that that the weather network can monitor the ongoing seas on their own if they so desire. Also on the tower is other weather equipment, like what you can see here behind me. The fan monitors the wind speed and the wind direction, and the other unit monitors the visibility so that you can tell how far across the water that you can see. Now, personally, I find that automated visibility is not quite the same as actually standing outside and taking a look yourself. We do have to report the visibility in our regular weather reports, and I do check the visibility monitor as well, and I find that the numbers can vary quite significantly from what the automated version says and what I can actually see, and the distances that I can actually see. So one reason why we don't always rely on automation for the actual weather reports. So I was thinking it'd be pretty cool to actually take a look inside, but unfortunately you have to take the whole top end of the unit apart. You need some tools and stuff to actually do it, and I'm not going to do it on this one, but okay, so what I do have here is I have something very similar, and we'll take a look inside so that you can see essentially how these lights work. Now this is still a Fresnel lens, and you can see by all the steps and everything that it is set up so that the light can be emitted over great distances. Now, of course, this one doesn't spin, so this light would actually be a steady light. This would always be orange, and it wouldn't be blinking. So this is likely from a buoy or something where the light needed to be on all the time and wasn't flashing. So why don't we take a look inside so that you can see what the actual apparatus of the light itself looks like. This is the apparatus itself, the light apparatus. So you put in all the different bulbs. The bulbs fit in here like so. And then when a bulb goes out, it actually detects that it goes out, and it will click into a new position. So that's essentially how it works. Pretty simple stuff. So when a light goes out, the system can tell, and then it would essentially just rotate the light. And that's what it's like to be a lighthouse keeper in today's world. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you haven't had an opportunity yet, please check out this video here of the basics of lighthousing, and then check out this video here, the history of lighthouses and how we got from there to where we are today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and please feel free to subscribe to my channel if you'd like to know more about what it's like to be a lighthouse keeper. Thank you so much for watching this series with me, and we'll see you next time.